In this video, we're going to look a little bit more at the materials and different options that we have within them and show a few examples of creating different types of materials. And so I'm going to start by double clicking in here and building a material similar to what we started with last time. So starting with the Fresnel and the color. Setting up the color. Turning off reflectance. Turning on environment. And then going to the content browser and pulling in one of these HDRI images. I'm going to blur it, maybe a little bit more, and lower the strength, and also give it a little bit of a bluish color to it, and then drag that onto my object. See how that's looking. Looks okay. I'm going to tile this twice vertically so we get this nice non-detailed reflection. We aren't able to discern exact imagery out of this, but we get kind of a nice overall reflective surface. And so what I'm going to do is duplicate this. So I duplicate the material, and I'm just going to go in and change the Fresnel color to a red. And maybe tint this a little bit on the red side as well. And in this case, I want to use that alpha channel to limit where this material will be placed. So again, I'm going to go to my surfaces. This time I'm going to pull up tiles, and I'm going to change the type of tile, so the pattern, and I'm going to choose, say, rings 1, and set this to be white, white, and because remember these are looking at, this one won't really make a difference, but we're looking at white and black values for where the alpha is going to take place, and I could adjust the global scale as well. For right now, I'm just going to drop this onto my object, see how it's looking. And so I'm going to look at how it's applied, offset this over, and maybe lower the length to 50%. Maybe a little too much. There we go. Now you'll see again by default we're getting that soft effect. So if I want to go out here, I can turn off soft. So as I turn off soft, I now get a crisper edge on the surfaces. And by using that environment channel, duplicating this material over, the environment channel is being applied the same. So I get that nice realistic reflection across the multiple materials. And so the way these materials work is they just stack on one another. When you have an alpha channel, it's just like a layer mask, or a layer with a mask in Photoshop or another image editing software. It reveals the layers beneath it. So that's what we're seeing as I've built this up on this object. So let's look at a couple more things. I'm going to create one more new material here. And in this case, let's see, I'm going to use another surface, this time metal, and I'm going to set this color to be like a wooden color, so I get this nice kind of strange wood color here. And I'm going to turn off reflectance. And I'm going to go to the diffusion channel. So again, remember the diffusion channel is how light is getting absorbed into the surface and how it's reflecting. So it uses that grayscale value. And if you place an image in here with color, it basically converts it. It looks at it as a grayscale value. So if I come in here and I choose wood, for example, and place this on my object, you'll see that I get these really dark areas where the wood grain, and you can see how it updates in my preview as well. So how it's wrapping and creating this effect. And if I cast a little illumination on here, we can kind of see how this looks with light and shadows. And so now we can kind of see this a little bit better as it picks up the light areas and the dark areas. It does interact somewhat with shadows, not as much as things like bump channels do, so won't see a big difference here. And so I could take this, drag it into the bump channel, use the filter, colorize to get a grayscale, enable the bump channel. And so a lot of times your diffuse maps will mirror something similar to your diffusion map. And so now that'll interact a little bit more with my shadows, especially if I raise the quality. So perhaps if I change this to an area shadow and render this. So all these channels kind of work together to allow you to build these realistic and impressive textures. One more thing about alpha channels. Here's an example of a scene with not just a still image, but actually a movie placed in the luminance and the alpha channel. And so these movies, if I click on here, when you bring in a movie, you actually will pull up an animation tab, and so it allows you to specify, where the movie starts, where the movie ends. So don't think that these channels are just restricted to bringing in images or using shaders and surfaces within Cinema 4D. You can actually bring in movies. And so what I did was I brought in a movie for the color and placed it in the luminance channel because I did not want any hard shadows hitting from the light that's coming in the outside. I wanted to preserve the integrity of the color of the character, so it's in the luminance channel. And then I also loaded in an alpha channel. And so here they're working together. This is on a plane that is animated across the scene. So as you'll see here, the character walks across the screen. Now the viewport's not going to update to show the animation, but it does show where the alpha channel is taking out the background. If I were to turn that off, I would get this black card and enable that. We can see through the surface. And so what this allows me to do is actually create animations like this. So this is just kind of a low quality render, but I'm getting nice reflections in the ground plane from the character. So just a cool way to integrate other things like video and 2D animation into your 3D scenes. one last thing we'll look at in this video is the comparison. We talked about bump channels and displacement channels in the last video, and you can see that here. So when you want to compare renders, and this is a good thing when checking materials, you can set one as A, set one as B, and then do a A-B combination, compare. And so this is the difference between using a bump channel and a displacement map. And if I come in here to filter, I want to turn the saturation up a little bit, as well as the contrast, so we can kind of see this a little bit better. So here you can see the bump channel faking depth within the material, and then the displacement channel really creating that depth. So the bump channel faking depth, the displacement channel actually creating that depth. And a lot of times you'll use these in conjunction. Sometimes it's good to get fine details in the bump channel and larger movements in the displacement channel. So right now I have a very high subdivision level, so I was able to pick up some really great details inside the displacement channel. Alright, so hopefully this has shown you some of the methods that you can use to build up materials using multiple materials on one object, as well as some of the tips to using the alpha channel to not only be able to build up those textures, but also to incorporate things like videos and other images that take advantage of transparencies and enabling you to build some interesting looking materials. And we've also talked about the diffusion channel and the displacement channel. So look for more videos to come out where we'll talk more about materials and some of these built-in shaders and surfaces that we can use to build procedural textures that really look great close up in the camera.